Okay, awesome. Awesome. So yes, today the topic is SMART goals. And this is always an interesting topic. So we do want to touch base kind of on your goals. A big thing for me, as Jake mentioned this morning, it's the last Monday of January. It just hit me really quickly, like, where are we at? We're 29 days into the new year. A lot of us made new commitments, resolutions, all the fun things. So I would just really start by saying, where are you at with your goals? So that was kind of the idea behind this. And then really going into with a little bit of an NLP twist to it, just because a lot of us have heard SMART goals before. And so we've heard them. I'm going to go through both of them. So maybe you've heard it one way and know one way, and then I'll tell you the NLP way, which is just a little bit different. So basically NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. So it really is kind of the thought process. The true definition is studying people who are successful. So that is what the NLP really is. Getting into the success of other people comes down to the way that they think, they feel, and they act, and on their programming. So this is kind of a different take on goals that really is more about your programming and how you can change it so that we can succeed better, right? So we can reach those goals. So yes, hopefully everybody on here has a GPS. That would be the first thing I'd like to just kind of say as far as making sure you're on track to hit your goals for the year. So a GPS is really one goal, 3 priorities, and 5 strategies on top of all of that. So GPS stands for goal, priority, and strategy. And we've also called it a 1-3-5. So that's one goal, 3 priorities, and 5 strategies. So if you don't know what we're talking about, I would love to, even if you do know what we're talking about, you've created one, we'd love to sit down with you and be able to go over and make sure that, it looks good. It's something that can be measured. It can be tracked, all of that stuff. So that's kind of the base of this. And then the SMART goals is how you're going to create that GPS and what it looks like. So SMART is an acronym. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timed. So that's basically the acronym of SMART goals. That's the way most people have heard it. That's how most books are teaching it, is the SMART goals.
How many of you have seen SMART goals before? Like heard that acronym?
Oh, nice.
Cool. Yeah, I was going to say, because Terry knows that I kind of whine about the SMART goal thing because it's like, to me, I've heard it a lot of times. I'm just like, and she's like, oh, but then she showed me kind of how she breaks down SMART goals, like what she's going to share with us, I think is really unique. And also, if you haven't heard SMART goals, they are just a great criteria to make sure that you're setting goals that you can actually know whether you've achieved them or not, and they make sense for you and for your business. So
yeah. So the NLP version of the SMART, they do definitely state the exact same thing with a little bit of a twist. So the S would stand for simple, and you can see how that relates to specific, but keep it simple. So we don't want to try and achieve too many goals at once. We want to just keep it very simple. The M stands for meaningful. And this one meant a lot to me. Is it meaningful to you? Because somebody of my personality say, is it measurable? We do have to measure our goals. The path is in the math, right? So we do have to have things set around actual numbers and something we can measure. But also keep in mind, is the measurable meaningful to you? So does it support all areas of your life? I do have some good questions to kind of write down and ask yourself as we go through this too, but is it meaningful to you? Does it touch every area of your life? Does it motivate you? So meaningful, motivate, things like that. Is it motivational to you? If it doesn't motivate you to do it, you're not going to do it, right? So we want to make sure it's meaningful. Achievable is also stands for all areas. So basically all areas of your life. So spiritual, your career, your physical, your growth, your family, and your relationships. Those are basically the areas in the circle of life. And we want this to be, we want, everything to be whole as a human. That's also kind of part of the NLP, is we do want to work on our whole, not just business. I know this is, we very much talk about real estate goals and but we want it to be your whole area, your whole life, all the areas. So all areas, and also another term for the A would be as if. So achievable, all areas, as if. So as if it's happening now. So as you are writing out the goals, really kind of turning it into an affirmation, so that it's, it's happening now. So if we're doing like any kind of tomorrow or in the future or something like that, that really is a down the road kind of energy. You want to create your goals with a today type of energy, something that is happening now, even if it isn't. And I know sometimes that could feel a little bit like a lie. If you're like, I am now making $1 million, and instantly your head says, no, you're not. That's a lie. But we do want to train our brain, because remember, we are trying to come up with new programming. And so it is really important, if we continue the same programming that we have, that is basically, I will sell this many houses. I'm going to get to this many houses. I will achieve something. It's always down the road. You're always just pushing the goal down the road. So really making sure that you understand that it's acting as if in actually writing the goals. So once I learned all of this, I really wanted to go back through my GPS and ask myself these questions. Did I write it as a future date, or did I write it as if it's happening now? The R stands for realistic, which we've already mentioned. So the NLP version of it is responsible, or as we taught you in the NLP class, is it ecological, which basically just means it's good for me, it's good for you, and it's good for everyone. So are we being responsible with our goals, not just realistic, but also responsible? So I really like that too, because, is it good for your family? Is it good for all areas of your life? Are we being responsible with this goal? We talk a lot about money is good for the good it can do, right? So we want to make sure that our goals are very responsible around that as well. And then the last one, so in traditional SMART goals, it's timed or timely. So you do want to have some dates and deadlines and things like that. And then the NLP version is the T stands for toward. So I kind of mentioned this already, but toward something. So you're moving in a progressive, you're talking progressively, like it's actually happening. It's not down the road. So toward what you want. So really progressive in getting exactly what it is that you're wanting. So these are just really good questions to ask yourself as you're going through those goals. And again, so the areas of our life, spiritually, career, physical, growth, family, relationships, ask yourself, how do I want to think? Does that relate back to the goals? How do I want to think? How do I want to act? So maybe you're not thinking that way now. Maybe you're not acting this way now, and that's all okay. But when you are sitting down to do these goals and coming up with your SMART goals, ask yourself, how do I want to feel? How do I want to act? How do I want to think? So we have a thing here in bold, which we talk a lot about our bold laws, but think, do, have, right? So we have to think of who we want to be first, then we go and do, so take the action, and then we get to have or receive. So think, do, and have. Am I saying that wrong? Think, do, have. Think, be. It has changed a couple times, right? Be, do, have. Yes.
Be, do, achieve, or yeah.
Yeah, when I was coming out, I'm like, this isn't sounding right. But basically it comes back to, how do you want to think? So what kind of thinker? For me, I want to think bigger. I constantly want to be thinking bigger, bigger, bigger. Unless we start to open up that pathway to think bigger, our goals are not going to be achievable, because we're not thinking on that level yet. So how do you want to think? Who do you want to think like? Who do you want to act like? How do you want to feel? So those are some really good things as far as like the NLP and changing your programming are things that you have to ask yourself when you're setting the goals. Another idea, and I love this too, it did come from an NLP training, and we also do this in bold. And I've heard of many people doing this every single month. It is recommended that you write a letter to yourself dated 1 year from now, and then writing out as though every single thing that you wanted to happen has already happened. So once you do that and you've just kind of put it out there and everything's happening, I love the idea of doing it every single month. So right now it's January 29th. Today I could write down February 29th because it's a leap year. I could write down February 29th. 2024, and all the things that have happened. So breaking down the goals, is there a certain number of production I wanted to have happen in the next 30 days? Is there a certain number I wanted to see on the scale? Is there, whatever it is you're going for, write it as though it's already happened. And really doing that once a month, I think there's huge power in writing yourself that letter. So that's another way you can really change your programming when it comes to these SMART goals. If you don't know what you want, start with what you don't want, which I thought was very interesting. So we start talking about, affirmations and really thinking of things that we want and writing it as if. I think it is a good exercise to write down, because sometimes it is hard to think bigger. So if you're not able to come up with the goals, think of what you don't want, create the goals based on the exact opposite of that, and then move forward. So that was just a good way of thinking about how can I get the exact opposite of what I'm wanting. So any questions on that so far? Any comments? Anybody who's written goals this year that can kind of go off of that? Anyone?
Take a call.
Oh, you're good.
Maybe you talked about this. I'm not sure you did, but it seems like when you talk about goals, if you don't share them with other people and have some type of accountability, then they're just wishes.
Yes.
And I've done that almost all the time in my life. And I just say, oh yeah, these are my goals, and I just let them sit there like this thing.
Yes.
So it's good, even though they may be hard or you don't want to be called out, but if you have someone you can trust, and like, hey, how you doing on these? Rather than, hey, you messed up, did you do this? You have an accountability partner that'll help you, remind you, and kind of be more motivated.
I love that. I love that. Hopefully everybody was able to hear him say that.
Yeah.
Were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, it is important to share your goals, and that could be with each other to hold yourselves accountable. It could be with your coaches, Terry and myself. We want to hear what your goals are, and we want to be able to check in with you on how those are going. So the big thing is we just have to figure out, because we don't want to set your goals for you. We want to show you how to set a good goal, and then we want to help you reach whichever goal that is for you. So we would totally help you figure out what the goal is, and then we do want to be able to hold you accountable to your own goals. We're all at different places. We all have different things. Some of our clients, they're committed to making 30 calls a day, and that's just what they're doing, and that's perfect for them because they've got big goals. And some of our clients, I have one right now who her goal is one. Her goal is one call a day. And as long as she does one call a day, I stay off her back. And I know that will snowball into wanting to do more and more. But it's just, whatever your goal is, as long as it meets all those criteria and it means something to you, then let's do it and just share it with us so we know how to help you with it.
Love it. Does anybody else have any questions so far, or any other thoughts on kind of the change of the traditional SMART goal versus kind of more of I guess it's more of like the touchy-feely version of getting into our brains and kind of the psyche behind all of it?
Yeah, I'll add something that's helped me with goals. I've kind of gotten away from like long-term, just like those crazy goals, just because life changes so quickly. And so for me, I focus more on like daily things that I can do, like daily goals, like Nick was saying, daily dial amounts, stuff like that. That's helped me a ton. And then I figure like the life that I want to build will happen naturally. Like those options for things I want will open if I'm doing the right daily habits. So I just simplify it, and then it's more of like a daily thing, and so that way I don't have room to procrastinate it. It's like every day I need to be doing it. That's something that I've taken away.
I love that. I think that is such a good point. There's a really good book, and actually this is how I run my GPS as well. Has anybody heard of the 12-week goal, or the 12-week year is what it's called. The 12-week year, it's an awesome book. But it really is something where you break those goals down into 12-week increments so that we don't, like you said, if sometimes a year goal, it's like 10 months down, we're like, oh, I forgot to look at it, or I wasn't taking the proper action. And then it almost becomes impossible to complete, where if you're paying attention to it every single day and chunking it down, you will make that progress. So I love that. I love daily goals.
And I think Liz is good at this, but like, I think it's good when you have your goals to maybe look at them and see what's gonna get in your way.
Yes.
You maybe think on the, I'm gonna say the negative side or the challenging side and say, okay,
Yeah.
I wanna do this, but what's gonna stop me? And then you can plan on getting those things out of the way or stepping over those stumbling blocks or things like that will help you accomplish that.
I think that's so good, especially when we're thinking big. We're not really thinking about what could get in the way. So that's a really good question to ask. You know, what distractions, what could stop me, what potentially could pop up that I'm not thinking about.
Because as a coach, you know, like, I mean, if you coach sports, you want to implement something, but then you have to think of like, what if the other team does this? You have to have a few options. Like, okay, if this happens, then we're going to roll option B. And so I think you need to have that in your goals.
I love that. Liz, were you going to say something? I saw you pop off mute.
No, just I think Marcel said it really well. I think if you can mitigate like what may come up ahead of time, then it's a lot easier to just figure out what the solution is. So what I like to do is if you're setting a goal or you have your next actionable step, it's like, okay, what are the top 3 things that could maybe come up that would prevent me from doing this? And I'll even write down like my own brain or I get too nervous, right? Or simple things. And sometimes the answer is just to tell myself, F it and do the thing and move forward. But if I write down that solution, I know where I need to go if I'm feeling that way.
Yes. I love it.
Isn't that like Mel Robbins thing? The 5-second rule, like just don't think about it for more than 5 seconds. You just do it.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which we'll probably hear in a couple.
I know. I'm excited to hear her. Yes, that is one of my very favorite books as well. If you have not heard that book, it very much is exactly what Liz said, which was basically just F it and do it, which I love. But it gives you 5 seconds and that's it. 5 seconds. What is Johnny saying? I'm not one to journal and write down goals consistently, but I have done it a handful of times in the past couple years. And I've noticed that every time I go back to read those goals, I achieve them. Awesome. So I can only imagine how beneficial it would be to make a habit to do it consistently. Writing, seeing your goals definitely help. Totally. So one thing I'm super committed to this year was my vision board. I've been doing vision boards forever, like for a very long time. I just felt like there was really a new way that you could do it. And a lot of it started with these really kind of deep questions and making sure I'm looking at it every single day. Because if you're anything like me, you'll make something really nice and pretty, and then it will go behind a desk and you don't look at it. So takes me back to kind of what Ryan was saying, the daily, consistently just looking at your goals, your GPS. That's why I wanted to bring this up again, even at the, we're still only in January and we're 29 days in. So have we made progress on the goals that we set for ourselves? I think is just a good question. Daily goals help big. I'm the same way. Yep. I think a lot of us are. We're probably all kind of prone to that. So something else that really, if you were sitting next to me, you'd see I doodled it. But something else when they were teaching the SMART goals to us is really make sure that you're celebrating, and you really should be celebrating your goals closer to either 80 to 90% of completion. The way that they described it is if these goals are, meaningful to you and we're being responsible with them and all of the stuff that we're talking about in SMART goals, they are constantly changing and we want to constantly be thinking bigger. And a lot of times we're not going to achieve all of the exact goals the exact way that we thought that we would, or more importantly, in the time frame that we thought we would. So you have to celebrate yourself along the way. And if you don't celebrate, achieving the goal, you could get to the end of the 12 months and just say, oh my gosh, I didn't do what I wanted to do. I failed. And also, if you look back, just like Johnny's saying here, you could look back and see how many you actually did achieve. And maybe you didn't get to 100% on them all, but you made huge progress. So celebration, I think, is a really big key. So maybe setting yourself up at 80 or 90% of the goal to reward yourself, right? So do you have some things in place that you can, take some time to celebrate where you've gotten on the goals? I think that's all part of SMART goals too. Yeah.
And then bring in NLP, right?
Yeah.
It's the failure feedback.
Yes.
And so I don't know of anyone who completes their goals 100% the way they want it. So we got to be a little kind to ourselves and just know that when we have a failure, it's feedback. Okay, then how can I adjust that?
Yes. What could I do differently? What could I have done differently? Yeah. I love that. He said, there's no failure, only feedback, which is so good. Were you going to say something? No? Okay.
True though.
Yeah, very true. So I was just going to read to you guys a couple more kind of the NLP version of achieving your goals, but keys to achievable outcomes. We've talked about some of them already, but begin by asking yourself, how is it possible and that they don't have it now? So if you start to think about that, like how do we not have this right now? Because that's going to bring up all the things that you could change or the things that you could do, or bring up just the possibility of ideas. That's a really good way to start. You're asking yourself questions. And then number one, clearly specifying your outcome. What will I see, hear, and feel when I have this? So whatever it is, have you taken the time to actually think about what it would feel like to have it? What kind of sounds are you going to hear? What are things you're going to see? Instantly I think of a car, because it's just easy to be like, are the windows down? Is the music playing? Like, so you have to be able to get all of this feeling inside of this when you are writing down your goals. So maybe it's running through a marathon, maybe it's, losing some weight or whatever it is, but how are you going to see it, feel it, and hear it when that happens? Think of all of your senses. Make your goal as compelling as you can by adjusting and using keywords, things that are going to really like remind you why it is that you're wanting to do what you want to do. So kind of think of keywords that you could put up places, keywords, maybe you wear a bracelet with a word, but just something that's going to consistently on that daily basis remind you of what it is you're wanting to achieve. Number two, state your outcome positively. So what specifically do you want as opposed to what you don't want? So when you are talking to people about your goals, it wouldn't be as impactful to say, oh, I want to make $1 million, but I know I'm never going to do that, right? So you just negated the whole thing. Are you stating this very positively when you are stating and sharing it with other people?
I think even like future pacing it, a lot of times people say I want to, or
even the word want.
Yeah, like want equals lack. So it's like if it's I am doing this, when people ask me what I'm doing this year, selling 100 homes, period. Not like I'd sure like to. I mean, sometimes I say if I don't, I'm gonna get out of the business, but it's like I am selling 100 homes, period. So
and I would say that just reminded me of a keyword that we've all heard Nick say a lot this year in the last 29 days. I've heard him say non-negotiable almost every day. So that to me is a keyword that he has adopted in wherever he was in planning his goals, somewhere non-negotiable. It's totally a keyword for you. And now I'm starting to adopt it because yep. So that's a good example of a keyword. Just having that constantly in front of you. But yeah, future pacing, that's also in here. Basically, it's now January 29th, 2025, and I've achieved all of this. So that's kind of an example of future pacing. So I love that you brought that up. So specifying the present situation, I think it's always good to know where are you? Where are you right now in relation to the outcome? So we have to know where we are and to be able to get to where we're going, right? We have to know where are we starting at. So have you looked at those specific areas? Do you know where you are financially, physically, your career, your spirituality, your key relationships? Do we know where we are now and where we want to get to? So could you put them on a scale of 1 to 10 and shoot for getting from a 5 to a 7 or a 7 to a 10? We just really have to know where we are at. Nobody is coming to save you or parent you. I love that, Ryan. Tell us more about that.
That was just a compound on top of what Nick was saying, the non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And we talked about Mel Robbins before. She says that often, because I think all of a sudden one day we just become adults, and we've always been told what to do our whole lives. And so we're used to that. And then we become adults and we forget that all of our responsibilities we're supposed to be doing, like nobody's going to tell us we need to be doing those every day.
I love that. So that's kind of probably a key quote that you're thinking of in terms of keywords.
Oh yeah. On top of non-negotiable. I like that.
We're going to have a few by the end of the class. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So get in the first step. If you had nothing else to do but achieve the goal, what is the very next action you would take? I think Liz brought this up. Like, what is the next the very next action you can take on your goals. If you had nothing else to do but take the next action, this would be a good question you could ask yourself daily, right? Like what am I going to do right now to take action on this? Uncover the evidence procedure. So how will you know when you've achieved the goal? And I think this really goes back to number one. So what am I going to smell? What am I going to hear? What am I going to see? How am I going to feel? So how do you know once you've achieved this goal? Because if we want to celebrate at 90%, we have to know what 90% is, right? So, I mean, the SMART goals really break down into just so many different details. And I think that's a really good question you have to ask yourself. Because sometimes I think our goals are just so, I don't know, ambiguous. You just like throw it out there, but you really have no idea what it means. So those are good ways to keep yourself accountable to that. What will the outcome get for you or allow you to do? And based on that answer, are you sure that's what you want? So I think this goes back to kind of the responsibility of our goals. So are we setting them reasonable? Are they responsible? Are we sure that the outcome is something we want? Because if it's not, if you look back, so maybe even Johnny, you look back on those journals and you see those goals and maybe the things that you didn't achieve. I can definitely tell you there's many goals I didn't achieve that I was frustrated with. And then when I looked back, I was like, I didn't actually even want that. So it's no wonder I didn't achieve it. So I think that's really good too. Is this self-initiated or self-maintained? Is it only for you? Are you the only person in charge of your results? So I think that's a really good question too. Who do you need on your team? What leverage do you need? What system or tool do you need to help you get further down the road when it comes to this goal? Or is it something that only you can do?
When you say only you, I also think in the context of like, there is power in it being something that only you have the ability to do.
Yeah.
Like when there's other people involved, it's easy to blame others or, come up with excuses. So kind of interesting. It's making me think because it's like, you can't do it on your own. So that's not my point. It's just, but if it is just yours, if it's something that only you can do, like either you make your calls or you don't make your calls. It doesn't matter what anyone else does. Then it's something that you can really hold yourself accountable for and keep the measuring stick on.
I love that. Love that. Where, when, how, and with whom do you want it? And are there any drawbacks to that? So I think this kind of still keeps going back to that ecology of everything. Who's it good for? Where, when, and how, and with whom do you want this? Kind of just getting more clear on that picture. Establish resources is another key to achievable outcomes. What personal resources do you have that will assist you in achieving this? So what do you already have? Maybe the next question would be, what resources do you need? Have you ever done this before? And if the answer is yes, how did you do it before? If the answer is no, is there somebody else you need to talk to? I think I always love the analogy of if it's been done once, it can be done again. And if somebody else can do it, why can't you do it, right? So if somebody, maybe we haven't done it before, but if somebody else has, do we need to be talking to that person?
And that's the NLP, right? The pattern.
Yep.
So you talk about the pattern, but if it's been done, there's a pattern, then you can follow that pattern.
Yeah. It's so true. It takes me back to the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, the red book, right? Gary Keller interviewed all these people who were doing almost the exact same thing, created a system and a model around it. All we have to do is plug in. We don't have to recreate the wheel. So
yeah, it makes me think of like times that I do something and then I don't like the outcome that came out of it, but I'm like, but I know how to do that. So just going to do it again and not maybe going back and really looking at what the results were, whether I was happy with those or if I wanted them to be different. So when he was going through that process, it was like, oh, I know that process, but I think maybe sometimes I've got too much invested into what I've done that I'm not truly looking at. Is that the best idea? Or something like actually letting the results change your behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagining that you do have it now, what resources did you use to get it? So this is kind of the going back and, if I could do it now, how am I going to do it? So imagine that you already have it. Number 10, is it ecological? So is it good for yourself, others, and the planet? for what purpose do you want this? So we do talk a lot about goals being driven by a purpose. So really understanding what is the purpose of you wanting to achieve that goal, and what will you gain or lose if you have it? That's an interesting question too. What will you gain or lose if you achieve the goal? I think this would take you back to making sure that you really want it, making sure that the result and the outcome is something that you actually wanted. And then what questions to ask yourself: what will happen if you get it? What won't happen if you get it? What will happen if you don't get it? And what won't happen if you don't get it? So really understanding, the consequences of the goals, either good or bad. Again, taking you back to that ecological, is it good for everybody? So those are the keys to achievable outcomes as far as like the NLP version of trying to achieve your goals. Any questions or other thoughts on that? Okay. Something else, just kind of to wrap up the SMART goals that I think is super important, is reality statements in a positive way. So these are just a few of what we call positive reality statements. I can afford that. I always afford what I need when I need to. And I'm sure you can think of a time when that's true. Like I could sit here and think of a time when I didn't think I could afford something, and then all of a sudden I just did. I just made it happen. So it is a truth to say I always afford what I need when I need to. I allow myself to afford what I need at any given time. I afford anything I want to afford. There is always enough. I choose now to create enough. Energy is abundant, therefore there is always enough for me. So to me, these are really just positive affirmations, right? But if you could take some of these and really focus in on them and really watch your words, making sure that you are speaking positivity into your statements that you're saying to people. I make the most beneficial decisions with the most positive outcomes. I make wise decisions and always take the outcomes as learning. So kind of goes back to the failure is just feedback. I am my own greatest teacher. I get exactly what I need to see, hear, and know at any given moment. I am my own greatest teacher. I get exactly what I need at any given moment, see, hear, or know as well. I create my own future. I see myself as victorious. I am valuable. I value myself. I see the beauty in me that's always been there. I see myself as whole as I see myself as whole as I continue to confidently create the best version of me. I have what it takes. I know how to create confidence. I confidently believe in my ability to create what I want when I want it. I always choose to experience the positive in any given situation. I am in control of my mind, therefore I'm in control of my thoughts, decisions, and beliefs. So when you are creating these statements, and these are something I truly believe that you could create your own reality statements and as part of your daily, whether that be a journaling exercise, looking at your vision board, but whatever you're doing every single day to achieve your goals, you literally want to create these for yourself. And you really want to think about, the opposite of the negative of what you've been saying instead. So anything you've been saying, going back to the first one, I can't afford that. Reprogramming your mind to I can afford what I want when I need it, sort of thing. Just making sure that, if you're sick of something, find a healthy way to think or feel about it. So how can you turn that negative emotion into something positive and healthy? If you notice you're insulting yourself, think about how you could love that thing about you. So whatever it is that you're insulting yourself, how can you fall in love with that thing? And sometimes we talked a little bit about reframing last week. Sometimes a reframe can be a good new reality statement. So it's one of the best ways. And I love to do this with people around me as well, especially like my children. When and I think it's good to think of yourself as a child too. Like some of the things that we would say to ourselves, we would never say to our children, and we would never allow somebody else to say it to our kids without wringing their neck, right? So think about that too. So I like to reframe for my kids anytime they say something negative, because then it teaches me to focus on the reframing of things that I'm saying. So all of this really ties into reprogramming your brain, kind of switching the idea of the SMART goals into how can we change our own programming. Questions? Thoughts?
I love it. What are your
Awesome.
guys' thoughts?
Something I love about this is a huge word that I use is clarity. And this is like breaking down the word clarity and how to find clarity. And I usually have like a good list of questions. And Terry, you've added so many of that to my list after this when I'm setting goals. But I also ask myself at the end, what else do I need to provide myself clarity? And that has helped me so much. And so I'm so thankful that you're talking about these things and teaching us these things because I've taken away a lot and it's helping me have more clarity on where I want to go and how I can do that.
I love that. Another key word. I told you we'd have a few by the end. Clarity. I just wrote that down too. So thank you. I think that's just a good one word that we can really focus on. So thanks for sharing that. Anyone else? Another book recommendation, I'm definitely on the Mel Robbins kick. So as part of my goal planning, my goal setting for the year, is I do create a growth plan for myself. So every single month I'm reading a different book, I'm attending a different event or learning a new skill and creating a new habit. So there is a growth plan that we can go over if that's something you want to do as well. And so my books for January had to be Mel Robbins and Tony Robbins because we are seeing them at family reunion. So I did the 5-second rule, which is an amazing book, amazing concept. I personally like to listen to her, like in the audibles, because she's pretty just motivating because she's kind of a no BS kind of person. But I've also just recently started listening to her, the High Five Habit. So if you guys need any of this stuff in your life, as far as, which I believe we all need this, but anything as far as like confidence and creating change as far as how we think about ourselves or talk to ourselves, the High Five Habit is really, really good. I listened to it once before, maybe like a year ago, but it's super fresh in my mind right now and just an amazing concept of how our brain works and little things that we can do every single day to make huge changes. So couple good book recommends for this class too. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, perception really is reality. So I think the way that we talk about our goals, the way that we think about them, the things that we believe about them, they're super important. So our brain doesn't know the difference between the brain doesn't know the difference between what's happening and what we are saying is happening necessarily. Like it just takes what it has and runs with it. So you get to tell your brain whatever story you want. And sometimes that means you don't always get to have your first thought. You don't always get to choose your first thought. So if someone says, if maybe you didn't get the success that you wanted in real estate today, your brain might think, oh, this is a total waste of time. And you can't necessarily change that over time. You probably will, but you can't necessarily change your brain saying, wow, I'm totally wasting my time with this activity or whatever. But you can choose the next one, which is, oh, I'm on a path, I'm on a journey, and I'm doing really good, and it's going to be worth it. And I'm excited for my real estate career. And all the little things that I'm doing today are going to pay off huge 90 or 180 days from now. Like that's just, you can always make that choice to change. And long term, you'll just stop having those thoughts at the beginning for the most part. But yeah, as you go, you just have to make those little tweaks on that second thought.
I love that. Awesome. Any other questions or anything that we can help you with tonight? Okay.
Love it.
Well, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you coming this evening. Hopefully you took something good away. And tomorrow we have our morning huddle at 8:30 and then team meetings at all of the offices at 11 o'clock. So I would say that's on the agenda for tomorrow. Anything else that I'm forgetting agenda wise?
Prospecting on Wednesday morning I believe at the Salt.
This week. Cottonwood Heights, yeah. So we'll get together on Wednesday morning for our 201 Club and Power Prospecting Day.
It's going to be good.
Awesome. Okay, thanks you guys. Have a good evening.
Okay, see you later, guys.
Bye.